Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to another edition of Disaster Hack. I'm glad you're here. Let's go. So today we're going to talk about two approaches to emergency management. And at the outset, I want to mention that these are two ideal types. This means that I'm looking at two alternatives, two perspectives that may or may not be totally compatible with reality. Reality is a little bit complicated. But let's try to simplify things a little bit and learn about these two approaches. So our objective today is to understand these two perspectives and evaluate when we should implement each approach. So what are these approaches? Well, there's two of them. There's the traditional model and the professional model. We'll dive into each one. So the traditional model has various names. It focuses on civil defense, perhaps. It's a command and control model. It's bureaucratic, and it focuses on the emergency services quite a bit. This model came about because of the Cold War. There was serious concern among the parts of leaders in government that we might have a nuclear exchange with the Soviet Union. This could result in mutually assured destruction. Therefore, we need to do something to anticipate and prepare for and mitigate this type of conflict disaster. So what are the features of this perspective? Well, this approach gives the highest priority to war or conflict disasters. So this could be a nuclear war or maybe war itself or terrorist attack, those types of things. It argues or assumes that the government is the most reliable actor in those type of events. And it's best to adhere to hierarchy and SOPs, standard operating procedures. Another feature of this model is that it focuses heavily on first responders, so police, fire, EMS, and maybe even the military. So if we're assessing this model, we should look at the strengths and weaknesses. As far as the strengths go, the advantages, well, war is indeed devastating, and we do need to be aware of the consequences and how we might react to that type of conflict. The government is indeed a very important actor, and SOPs are logical guidelines. Hierarchy can save lives. For instance, if there's a fire chief who's explaining what should be done as they respond to a fire, that could keep people safe and protected. Another strength is that there is a desire for order, and that's natural. Disasters are very complex. We want to kind of simplify them and have an organized response to those events. But there are some weaknesses of this traditional model. Natural hazards are far more common than war type of disasters. The government's not the only actor. There's many people involved. SOPs cannot provide universal guidance for everything, and tops-down structures can slow down the response. In addition, we need to recognize that even when things look chaotic, they could be organized in the sense that things are getting done. So that's the traditional model. Let's turn now to the professional model. So this has different names. People refer to it as an all hazards approach. It's focused on networking and collaboration. There's an attempt to solve problems collectively, and it focuses more on public administration approaches rather than first response approaches. Now, why did this perspective come about? Well, first of all, there was a recognition that we have or we will experience all types of disasters. These could be conflict disasters, but they could also be natural hazards, technological events, pandemics, those types of things. So we have to take a broader perspective than just focusing on conflict disasters. In addition, there's going to be a lot of people involved in emergency management beyond the official government responders. So there's a lot of volunteers, for example, and there's many other organizations and agencies and society that participate. So we have to acknowledge those recognize that we can't prevent them from reacting, and in many cases, they can help us as we respond to and react to a disaster. So, what are the features of this professional model? Well, first of all, it does consider all types of disasters, so not just conflict disasters. It recognizes that decentralization is inevitable. We can't prevent other people and organizations from responding. In addition, we might need to be flexible and creative and adaptive. We have to improvise. In addition, we have to value the contributions of all participants. If we're going to respond to a disaster effectively and efficiently, we want to make sure everyone is involved in helping us return things back to normal or hopefully improved conditions. So if we're assessing the strengths and weaknesses of this professional model, there's a few features we may want to mention. First of all, it does take an all hazards approach rather than focusing only on war and conflict. It acknowledges that there will be many participants involved and we need to integrate their efforts. We need to improvise and be flexible and adapt, and it does accept a very broad picture of disasters. Now, in terms of weaknesses, it does downplay a little bit the unique features of war or certain types of disasters. It may downplay the important role of first responders. It may fail to recognize the value of hierarchy or standard operating procedures. And maybe it doesn't allow us to see the very specific details of what's going on at the field level. So we've gone through each model, the traditional model and the professional model, and this brings up a very important question. Well, which one should I use? Well, in reality, disasters will illustrate or have elements of both of these models, but let me give you two examples where maybe it's kind of more clear-cut. Let's say that there's a chemical release at some industrial facility. In this particular case, we need some very specialized knowledge to deal with this disaster. So in this situation, we might really need to rely on the traditional model, making sure that we have expertise and hierarchy and standard operating procedures to deal with this particular chemical release. In contrast, let's say that we had a hurricane go through a community and just cause widespread devastation. In this particular case, we need a lot of people involved doing a lot of different activities, whether that's debris removal or damage assessment or restoring utilities or providing aid or sheltering people. It's clear in this case that we need a broader perspective. Hierarchy may not be very effective. We may need to be flexible and adaptive in terms of how we approach this broad event. So, to summarize things, we really need to know when we will utilize each model, and that will help us to be more effective in our preparedness efforts and our response operations. Thanks, and have a great day.